Hey there, and welcome to the Hike Strong podcast. I'm Marcus Shapiro, your hiking strength and conditioning coach and the founder of fitfortrips.com. In today's episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with one of my amazing clients from Maryland. His name is John. He was 62 years old at the time he completed the Tour du Mont Blanc and a one-day rim-to-rim hike within 1 month of each other. Our conversation toggles back and forth between the TMB and rim-to-rim. You'll learn about John's training strategies, tips for each of the iconic hikes, fueling strategies, and more. John also discusses his issues dealing with knee pain and how he managed to keep going strong despite the challenge. I am grateful to receive his endorsement. Enjoy my conversation with John. You originally reached out to me in July of 2019. I don't know if you remember that. And I believe that you were hiking the Oregon Crater Lake and Cascades region. I don't know if you remember that, but if you do you remember what your concerns were at the time and why you reached out to me back then?
Actually, I went on a bike trip for Crater Lake and whatnot, you know.
Oh, that's right. You were doing a Trek travel trip.
It was a Trek travel trip. And then I think I reached out to you because there was a connection between you and Trek Travel. And I was intrigued by kind of the offering. It kind of made sense to me that if you're signing up for these kind of trips, you kind of spend your time getting ready to take full advantage of the trip. So that's why I kind of just reached out to see what you could offer and how you could kind of help kind of making that trip better.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the other thing, I made a note of this, that you said that you would reach back out to me that perhaps you were going to want to do Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
Did you do that within the time between then and when you reached back out, which people should know that you actually reached back out 4 years later?
Yes.
Which is what we're going to get into. But did anything happen with Kili, or is that still on your bucket list?
Well, no, if you look at the timing, if that was 2019, what happened in 2020, then the world shut down.
Aha, yes.
That's still on the bucket list, but no, I didn't kind of pursue Kili.
Okay.
The world got in the way, and then since then, other activities have kind of popped up.
It did. Well, your bucket list filled up quickly because, and let's get into it, man, you did the Tour du Mont Blanc and rim to rim in a day.
Correct.
So let's talk about each of those separately because there's a big difference between the two. So the Tour du Mont Blanc has 11 stages, about 112 miles, 32,000 feet of elevation gain. And the rim to rim, which you did one day, has 22 miles and about 6,000 feet of elevation gain. Because I think you did the South Kaibab to North Kaibab route.
That's correct. Yeah.
Now, on your TMB trip, the most you hiked was 11 miles in one day and 4,000 feet of elevation gain in a day. Now, I don't know if you did all 11 stages, and at some point we can get into that. But the point is, these are two very big, different endeavors. Talking about the TMB first, why did you choose it, and what were your biggest concerns?
Couple reasons. I've done kind of hikes in other parts of that region before. And so this was kind of one that was still outstanding on my bucket list to go do, right? And given the popularity of it, it was kind of intriguing to me to kind of go off and try this. The other thing is I thought I would use it as a training exercise to prep me for the rim-to-rim effort, you know, a month later.
Yeah. Okay. And I do recall that it was for about 4.5 weeks. Let's see. Yeah, it was
less than that. We did the 13th to about the 20th or 22nd of August in Mont Blanc. And then we did the rim to rim on the 13th of September.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll get more into that. But first of all, tell me what your biggest concerns were for the TMB.
So I've been suffering from osteoarthritis in one of my knees pretty badly. And it's really had gotten worse in the last 15 months, a year to 15 months, where running became difficult and then hiking mostly on descents right? So the pounding on the knee to the extent that was just painful. I was very slow going down, even assisted with pulls and whatnot. So the ascents didn't bother me as much on the TMB. It was more kind of long, sustained descents. And could I figure out a way without using cortisone shots or kind of other medicinal kind of solutions to try and kind of make it comfortable and enjoyable?
Okay. And we'll talk about the program in a second. All right. So let's go to rim to rim. So why did you choose rim to rim in a day? And what were your biggest concerns about that endeavor?
I had done it once before from the other direction, from the north to the south rim. And we had friends that, or family members that wanted to tackle this. So having the experience of done it one way, I wanted to go the other way. And the first time I did it, kind of struggled in the last quarter of the effort. So, and probably it was, I didn't fully prepare or understand the undertaking, the first time. So this time I wanted to go in kind of better prepared, more aware of what it took to do it, and then to enjoy doing it. And so that's where I was kind of, once again, for that one, I break it into thirds in terms of the concerns. One is a sustained descent, right? So kind of pressure on the knee. The next section is, dealing with the extreme heat. In that time of year we did it, kind of in the bottom of the canyon, temperatures were tipping over 105. So you've got to kind of figure out how to manage your body through that. And then lastly, of course, you've got to get yourself out. So it's then becomes a taxing on the cardio system to kind of do this 5,000 or 6,000 feet of climbing at the end after you've got 18 miles plus in your legs, plus 8 to 10 hours of walking. And then you've got to climb out of the canyon.
Yeah, it's no joke. Quick anecdote from my end. I just got back from Arizona. So I was a co-guide for a rim to rim trip.
Yep.
And there were 10 clients. And so the guy's name is Will Burkhart. He led the group and I took up the rear. And we got up at 2 a.m. in Flagstaff. Yeah. Got up at 2 a.m, arrived in Flagstaff, then arrived at the South Rim, and then started to descend at 4 a.m. And we had headlamps on. And I think Will wanted to take, I think it was about a 3 mile per hour pace.
Yeah.
Might have been a 2.5 mile per hour pace, or maybe it was a 3 mile per hour pace. And that was critical because he wanted to get through the box, and he's just a pro. So he knows, what milestones to hit and when.
Yep.
So anyway, we're going down and there's one gal in the group who's in amazing shape. She was doing her peak milestone challenge that she did in the training program was about 3.5 hours on stairs. And she had also done a 15-mile walk with a heavy pack.
Yep.
And of course, prior to that, she had done other milestone challenges. But one thing that people should know about rim to rim, especially in the dark when you have a headlamp on, is when you're descending on South Kaibab, there's like almost zero humidity. So it's very dusty. It could be a little bit slippery. So the lugs on your shoes don't always grip as well. There are very short steps between these, let's call them railroad tie type.
Yep.
Do you remember those?
Yep.
Railroad type steps, right? And so there are a lot of those at the very beginning. Anyway, this woman felt very insecure about the footing.
Okay.
And she was going down at about a 1 mile per hour rate.
Ooh,
at a 1 mile per hour rate, you're not going to make it out.
Yep.
Long story short, head guide told her that she wouldn't be able to make it at that pace. It was actually very emotional. He was very empathetic about it. But in order to keep everybody moving and to keep her safe, he asked me to take her back out.
Oh, okay.
South. So we were down about an hour into the rim, into the South Rim. We head back up. Luckily, we had a little bit of cell service. We got the shuttle to come back. They were about an hour away. Came back, picked us up, and brought us around. Anyway, I share that just so that people understand that rim to rim is a pretty challenging endeavor. And it's not just the fitness, but, in this particular woman's case, it was just sure-footedness, balance, and stability. is really what slowed her down. And hiking experience, I think, might have made the difference. But anyway.
Well, a lot of it, and I'll tell people, you have to have your logistics kind of nailed and understand, kind of how you're going to kind of put all the pieces together. Because you mentioned getting to the rim at 4:30. I'll do you one better. I mean, we slept on the rim, got up at 1:30 and was at the trailhead by 2 a.m. for the exact same reason, to get down to Phantom Ranch by sunrise, right? Once again, knowing the different stopping points, where the water is, right? The timing, the heat, so we did that whole, we missed out on the scenery. It's a different kind of experience doing South Kaibab in the dark, but, we nailed the numbers. The dust that you mentioned is real. And one of the cautions we had is to, like anyone wearing contacts, to bring an extra set, because just kicking up the dust can get in your eyes and cause just irritations and whatnot, right? Either have a set of glasses or another pair of contacts to deal with that dust going down. We also were dealing with it. You probably didn't have it, but the water line, the Trans-Canyon water line had broken. So for about the week or so prior to us arriving, it was touch and go as to whether we would have to do it with filtered water, so we had iodine tablets, water filters and that, because we're still going to go, but we wouldn't have the accessibility to the taps, right? So, I mean, once again, all of these are just, they're logistical little kind of concerns that you can work around, but you've got to have the awareness about it, and then make sure you've got the proper solutions in place to be able to be successful on it. So
yeah, good. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
So I coached you for about 4 weeks, and I always kind of break up things when I do these podcasts with previous clients. I always kind of call out the amount of elevation gain and the mileage that you did in that time that we worked together. And in your case, you did work independently. So we did 4 weeks. And in that time, you were just kind of getting you were getting your footing, getting acclimated to kind of the plan. You did 23 miles and 7,029 feet of elevation gain just in that kind of 4 weeks. I think that was between treadmill, some stairs, and just some hiking and walking. And then you did 6 weeks on your own, which led right to the TMB, and 92, I guess you did about 92 miles and 19,123 feet up to that point. But then you had another 4.5 weeks to do the R2R, of which that 4.5 weeks, 2 of those weeks you're in Switzerland and so on and so forth to do the TMB. But at the end of our coaching, you felt that you could work independently and that all you needed to know were kind of your milestone challenges over the next 6 weeks prior to your TMB trips. Now, at the time, I'd only set kind of a 3,000 foot vertical milestone for you. And you said to me that, if you just know your milestones, that you're confident to work out on your own. Do you want to comment on anything about milestone challenges, about kind of how you made that transition from what you learned from the first 4 weeks and what you, I guess, liked about the plan that you felt like you could work independently after that?
So what I liked about the plan was kind of, it got me focused on the elevation gain, right? Because I'm living at sea level or in a place that doesn't have a lot of elevation. That was going to be the challenge, is how do I kind of figure out ways to kind of get kind of workouts that will add to kind of elevation. I didn't need the distance so much as the climb or the changes, right? So, kind of the structure you gave me kind of brought more awareness to kind of quality workouts versus just quantity, going out and kind of working my heart muscle. It was getting into my legs. And so the additions or the focus on, for instance, the stair workouts, right? I think those were something I hadn't done in years or whatever, and adding that in, even, kind of anywhere from 15 to 20, 30 minutes of constant stairs, I think were a big effort, right? In fact, my wife, who came to TMB, I got her out there and doing it. And after the first time, she just blew up her calves. She couldn't walk for a week. And so, but, in the long run, it was helpful for, getting her and us ready for those kind of long extended hikes uphill. So it was a pivot from my normal kind of routine of biking and running, right? Now adding in these other exercises that were more targeted towards the activity I would be doing. So it was the stairs, it was putting the ruck pack on and hiking with weight. So that was very helpful. And then, we had the flexibility exercises that, you gave me that I also factored in to kind of start kind of improving my flexibility and muscle strength, or even out some of the imbalances that I've got just in my flexibility and my muscle strength.
Okay. So when you returned from both of your trips, okay, both the TMB and then the rim to rim, you wrote to me that the TMB trip was very enjoyable and a great warm up for the rim to rim trip. Tracking my elevation throughout the summer and working on my flexibility was great prep for both. I had no issues with my legs on either trek and felt really strong after finishing. Can you share an anecdote from your TMB trip where you felt like the program really helped you out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was tackling any of these climbs. Day 2, we had about a 4,000 foot climb. And, I just kept a steady pace going up, no ill effects at all. Didn't even think about it. So because didn't have to worry about my leg strength, totally, kind of tuned in or locked in for doing that kind of work, I could enjoy the rest of the hike, the beautiful scenery and things like that. And then, in the Alps is much different than the canyon. It's all up followed by all down, right? And while I struggled a little bit, not struggled, but I felt, leg pain on the initial descents, as the week or the 10 days went on, I got stronger and stronger on the descents as my body became accustomed to it. So, I mean, I just attribute it to the work that I did ahead of time, kind of through this program and, kind of my own other kind of exercising that, made it successful. And I compare it to a year ago when I was doing similar type of activities that, it was a real struggle to kind of get through them.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point, which is not uncommon. And that is several days into a trip like that, you actually begin to acclimate even more so than you do right at the very beginning. But I think what the training that you did, it helped mitigate some serious issues you would have had you not trained at all.
Yep.
So the idea that in some cases you can go on a trip and you can get it, if it's long enough, you can kind of get in shape throughout. But you run the risk of serious injury at the beginning if you didn't do any preparation, that you may not be able to make it. So it sounds like you mitigated like initial issues and you felt strong enough at the beginning. And then once you hit maybe, I'm guessing around day 3, maybe 4 is when you kind of hit your stride. Does that sound pretty accurate?
Yeah. Even to the extent like the last 1 or 2 days, I was almost running down the mountain. I mean, I felt strong enough in my legs to kind of quote bounce, or kind of go at a little quicker clip, and it wasn't kind of just my body had kind of adapted to it. And, my knees and the rest of the stuff was kind of cushioning whatever kind of blows it was taking as I went down the mountain. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, very cool. Did you modify the TMB? Did you do all 11 stages?
No, what I'll call kind of the highlights, most of the big ones. We skipped a lot of the valley or the long flats on that. So, but we were tackling, kind of all the climbs on that. So we did the full circuit, but, we got shuttled between some of the locations just to our accommodations. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. So just the places where you'd be in the most extreme challenges is what you selected. Anything that was easy, you bypassed.
Yeah, I guess, or the most scenic proportions of it or whatever, right? I mean, they've got a lot of stretches as you go through. It's probably a nice valley or whatever, but it's 3 or 4 miles of kind of relatively flat pavement or whatever going between towns. So,
all right. Well, that you bring up something that some people might take away from it and may make those modifications. So that's cool.
Yeah, it's also interesting just contrasting the quality of the trails. I mean, you're familiar with the South Kaibab. I'd call that a fairly well maintained, even though it had the ruts from the mules and things like that. the Park Service does a great job in maintaining that. And given the amount of traffic, the Tour du Mont Blanc, you're going to see more of what I'll call ankle breakers, right? You're going over kind of very rocky terrain. Some of the descents, I mean, we had a 2.5-hour descent that was first all rocks and then it went to roots, right? Because you're also traversing 3 different countries with different standards of trail maintenance, right? There's not one entity that maintains it like the Park Service does in the canyon. So you're going to see different quality of trails. We also kind of ran into, because it was over multiple days, the weather conditions, were very varied, right? Didn't have the extreme heat, but you had wind and cold and rain, kind of all the other stuff you might see in an alpine kind of environment.
Interesting. I'm glad you brought up trail maintenance. In a previous episode, I think it might have been one of my podcasts, I was talking with somebody about ultralight backpacking, and in it, he compared kind of East Coast trails versus West Coast trails. East Coast trails can tend to be more aggressive. They're more legacy trails, older, not as many switchbacks as in maybe on West Coast, kind of newer trail systems, let's say. So the TMB seems more rugged, not as much in the way of switchbacks. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was
straight
kind of more straight up and down, right? I mean, that's a great analogy of an East Coast trail, right? Something you might see on the Appalachian Trail, whereas, the switchbacks and what they've done in the canyon, kind of makes it, kind of more amenable, In fact, in our group, we had in the rim to rim, we had 5 hikers and then we had 2 runners. So the runners actually departed right at sunrise. So they waited. They didn't want to run down South Kaibab in the dark, because they were running, they were able to beat the heat going across. So they caught us at Cottonwood Canyon, just on the other side of the box, kind of late morning. But, they were following similar protocols to us. Amazing. I mean, this, they did it in 6 hours, right? That rim to rim.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good time.
Yeah.
The group that we had, they did it in about 11 hours.
Yeah.
When I did it, we were looking to push more towards between 8 and 9.
Wow.
But one guy in our group didn't fuel properly on the descent at Cottonwood Campground. That's where it hit him.
Yeah.
It hit him hard.
Yeah.
And Will, who was the lead, he kind of took control. It was a little bit of, I'd say, kind of hypoglycemic. So maybe this is a good anecdote for people. It feels easier going down, but you still need to fuel, even if it's dark and it's cooler, and stay hydrated and so on.
Yeah, the fueling is something that this time really paid attention to. Kind of dry. And I tested some things out on Tour du Mont Blanc, different fueling kind of strategies, and electrolytes, so I use that as a test bed to say, okay, I'm going to try, this electrolyte and, this liquid fuel kind of thing and see how my gut reacts to it. In fact, we had 2 of our hikers that started to feel those kind of digestive issues, right? From, I think, either too much salt, so they got out of whack on their electrolytes. So they had got to Supai Tunnel, which is still about 1,000 feet or, 3/4 of a mile from the rim. And they started feeling that, some discomfort and struggled kind of that last little bit. But it was all from not quite being dialed in on their fueling strategies. So.
Yeah. So what did you settle on? What electrolyte mixes do you like?
So I was using LMNT. I had water in a bladder, constantly sipping off of that. I had a Nalgene full of, 1 liter Nalgene. I would keep LMNT in there. And then I had another mixture in the other one called Raw Fuel, which is another kind of more of a carbohydrate thing. And I found I was taking solid fuel most of the way across. The last little bit, it was easier just to suck down a whole liter of this raw fuel, so it was kind of a carbohydrate mix in a bottle that it just felt easier. My stomach didn't have to work to get it in there, So I guess you could say it's comparable to a gel or a gummy or something like that, that you could use. So.
Yeah, I agree with that strategy. So you can kind of get a good protein meal in the morning, head down the canyon, maybe some protein, carb kind of fueling, Cottonwood campground, maybe a nice sandwich, and some chips. And then that's it. And then after that, maybe more of a liquid kind of fuel, a lot of calories and electrolytes. I like Goo Octane.
Okay.
I'll have to look up what'd you call it?
Raw fuel.
Raw fuel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was on there. Yeah. I took down a slice of cold deep dish pizza that tasted great. And then the potato chips also, I think it was at Cottonwood or Manzanita, I cracked that open and the salt, they just tasted really good, right? The potato chips. I also had a Subway sub that I never got to because by the time I got around to it, it's just, I can't get that down or whatever.
Really
so.
Interesting. I remember when I did it the first time, I had a peanut butter jelly sandwich and I was so much craving like a meat sandwich at that Cottonwood campground. I wished I'd had it. But anyway, interesting. So going back to Rim to Rim, any anecdote from that you want to share where you think the program really helped you? Or did we flush out most of it?
No, I think we knocked it out. I think from a timing standpoint, reaching out to you, I think it was close to 3 months before actually doing that. It's almost like marathon training, right? If you don't give yourself the lead time, you can't decide a month before I'm going to get in shape to do it, right? So having the 12 or 13 week runway to kind of get this stuff, there was no cramming. You can't cram, I guess some people could, but I wouldn't recommend it. Kind of steady improvement over the 12 to 13 weeks, kind of make it more manageable and less intimidating on that.
That's a really good point. Segueing into the osteoarthritis diagnosis, you wrote in your chart, I looked back and you said knees improving because of strength work and being kinder, quote unquote, more time on bike, non-weight bearing, and more forgiving surfaces on the run with a slower pace. So you just want to comment on that?
Yeah. I mean, when I went to the orthopedic a year ago, the answer was stop doing this stuff. And I can pop cortisone into your knee, to get you through these kind of efforts. And I wasn't a big fan of that approach. So I said, well, can I try, physical therapy, stress/strength training in lieu of this, right? So I went down that path and, you have to stick with it. You're not going to make these changes overnight. I didn't kind of destroy my knees overnight. It wasn't like a kind of a traumatic event, with this arthritis. So, over the 12 to 15 months, kind of steady kind of work in terms of building up the other muscles in my legs, glutes, quads, calves, ankles, right around the knee, and then kind of improving the flexibility along with that. Hey, I saw the results from just doing that. So a lot of one-legged strength, learning how to hop again. It's getting ready for these trips. We had on our Tour du Mont Blanc some people that had come along the trip that had just kind of done urban hiking, right? Walking around Central Park a couple of laps. And that really doesn't prep you for doing the Swiss Alps, You may be cardio fit, but, you're going to struggle in other aspects of the stuff. So,
okay, makes sense. Something else in my notes. I wrote this. I said, wear a pack in the house almost every day for 1 to 2 hours. And I think I recommended that maybe because of your knees. Maybe we had to cut back on the volume of some of your training. So I think I was concerned that you might not be spending enough time on your feet, whether it was rucking or on the stairs.
Yep.
But do you want to comment on that? I'm not sure that you did that. Maybe you did.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on it?
I had enough kind of experience in the past with packs, right? And doing trips that I'm comfortable with, 15 to 20 pounds. I haven't done the large, 50 liter, 65 liter packs, for backpacking, but the smaller in the 20s up to 30 liters and stuff, I felt fairly confident. So I did throw the ruck pack on, right, as a surrogate for that. And I found that, I think that got me kind of where I needed to be on that. So.
Okay. So I'm going to have you comment on the various elements of your program and let's see what we flush out. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe you say, skip it, Marcus.
Okay.
but I'll bring it up. You can comment on it, how you think it might have helped, or anything you want to share about it.
Okay.
And then move next. So the first one is, I know you did some treadmill work. Any thoughts on that, or?
Yeah, that was kind of very productive in terms of being able to get a lot of elevation in a short amount of time. So a 30, 45 minutes, 60 minutes on a treadmill at a 10 plus or 12 degree incline, right? Help build lung capacity, leg strength. I didn't have long stairs here. So the stairs I could get up in about 2 minutes, or a minute and a half up and half a minute down. So the treadmill was able to kind of give you that long, kind of sustained effort for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, right, on a controlled environment, and kind of build leg strength and lung strength on that. So yeah, definitely recommend that.
Okay. And you mentioned 12 degrees. Just for the listeners, it's 12%. It's incline or grade. Just in case they look it up, they're going to see a disparity. There are charts out there that show you what degrees are relative to grade and so on and so forth. Anyway, just for the listeners there. Oh, so okay. And you went up to 15%.
Yeah.
Okay. And then as far as stairs, just quickly, I saw also in the notes, the Exorcist stairs.
Yes.
In the Georgetown neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do those at all?
Yes. Yeah. That's my go-to spot. And in fact, there's a little bit of a community there. A lot of people go down there training for different events or whatever. So you go down on a Saturday. We went down this last Saturday morning. Now that I've done them, just, it's a great way to kind of get a good sweat in 30 minutes or whatever. And you'll find, we found a couple other people there just on the stairs, up, down, Yeah, it's kind of a prime spot in DC for training for these types of events.
Okay, cool. And then walking and ruck walks. I think you were using a 20-pound pack. Is that correct?
Had a 20-pound pack, right? Yeah. So, we're close enough to kind of a park area here. So I'd walk anyhow. And then I just decided, well, might as well, kind of take advantage of the walk, throw the ruck on and, kind of get out and kind of kill two birds with one stone.
Okay.
So,
and then you had talked about how beneficial leg strength exercises were, especially for the knees. Any comments on that you didn't already mention?
No, I think you've got, it helps, either to work with somebody, either they're a PT or a personal trainer that kind of understands the exercises. I did a lot of single leg, like get-ups, lunges, things like that, and then progress over time. Some was without weight, right? So different deadlifts and whatnot. So having the supervision to make sure you're doing it correctly, I think is probably worthwhile on that.
And if I remember correctly, we didn't really go over the leg strength stuff. You in your exercise history, you were doing stuff with that, and where I helped coach you was utilizing the chart for your elevation gain goals, and then what modalities to use for that. So
right.
Okay. Have you adapted any of the elements in your current training plan that you were doing for your R2R and TMB, or have you kind of went completely into what I call off-season mode? So off-season mode is like hiking specific stuff, more of just a general approach.
No, the stairs will be now kind of incorporated, maybe a couple times a month. I mean, I enjoy them. It's kind of a new exercise to find out. And then also, mixing in the incline walking on the treadmill as an alternative to running, right? So if I'm, at the end of a work day or whatever, and I'm feeling like I need a little bit of an exercise and get in there quick, I just ratchet up the incline on the treadmill and go knock out 30 to 45 minutes of that and, feel a lot better. So those are the two that really jumped in. Last Friday, I went and did a local hike out here, which is Old Rag Mountain out in the Shenandoahs, which is, I think it's about 2,400 feet in elevation, right? Top to bottom. And usually do it at least once a year. And, it was a good marker to measure year over year kind of progress going up. And that one's a little bit, it's a rock scramble with, I wore climbing gloves because you just use it to get a better grip on the rock. So it's a different kind of ascent than, rim to rim, but, handled that very well. And then what was really pleasing, it's a 5-mile descent. Last year, I really struggled coming down that 5 miles, but this year, it much easier much quicker on that. So I definitely noted the progress on that. So
Okay, that's super. All right,
Yeah.
3 more questions, then we're going to wrap it up. So at the risk of you saying a big fat nay on this, I'm going to ask you anyway.
yeah.
Okay, I'm putting you on the spot, man.
Okay.
So would you recommend working with me to others who want to accomplish bucket list hikes? Oh, here we go.
Yes, and I'll tell you, I even recommended you on our TMB hike because, like I said, we had a range of people. I think there were 11 of us in the group, right? They'd come from different stuff. And it's my nature. I just was frustrated with people coming unprepared for an event like this. And I mentioned it to the guy because I think Alpenwild even kind of had you as, kind of a recommended resource. Right. And I mentioned it to the guides and said, look, you guys got to kind of recommend people get themselves ready or prep for these kind of efforts, because a lot of times they just show up and, it detracts from the rest of the group when, like, for instance, you had to turn around with that woman because she was that, different reasons or whatever, but being able to handle it. And we had situations on our TMB. We lost the use of a guide because they had to be peeled off to take a person on an alternate route or turn them around. And I attribute it to lack of preparation. So, yeah, I'd highly recommend it. The other anecdote I'll give it is guide service or, guide that I'd used previously for rim to rim. They do regular trips in the canyon. They're requiring any prospective client to send them some kind of documentation of a 15-mile hike or some level of effort to show that they've done requisite training, because they've just gotten into too many issues on trying to lead people across the canyon that were unprepared.
Yeah,
it's not a foolproof system, but
Yeah.
I would applaud it. Like, if you got to send them a Strava file or you got to show some kind of documentation to say, yeah, I want to do, I'm just not writing a check for this, but I'm also putting the time in to prep for it. Because unlike a marathon or a road race where you can just drop out, you can't. You can't. Right? I mean, the day we did rim to rim, they had to airlift. The helicopter had to land at Cottonwood to pull somebody out of that. Right?
Oh yeah, I saw horrific things on the sea. So I took the woman back up to the South Rim. Then we grabbed the shuttle back, came around. She still wanted to go down onto the North Rim just to experience a little bit. Because again, she was in good shape. It was just this sure-footedness. It was this stability. It was just an unusual thing. So we went down about a little over a mile. Now, keep in mind, people coming from the south to the north, we're catching them at like 21 miles into it. I saw some horrific things. Oh my gosh. I saw one guy, I saw him vomit probably 5 times. And I knew I was a mile from the rim. So I was like, I don't care. He didn't even have the energy. I literally grabbed his bottle.
Yeah.
I opened it up and I poured my goo Roctane in there and gave it to him. And then somebody else gave him their fresh water.
Yep.
I mean, I just saw some crazy stuff. That wasn't the only thing, but it's
I've done it.
Pretty
I've
dangerous.
also run support for others doing rim to rim, where I drove around to the north and did that, dropped in, and then hiked down to Supai and waited for people coming across with exactly that, with extra electrolytes and things like that, and also acted as a cheerleader to get them up to the top. Right.
Well,
we also had an incident the day we did it. A woman had, I don't know, she had some tape on her feet, like duct tape or something, and she peeled it off and ended up peeling off all the skins.
Oh, wow.
On her feet. And, she had to see the rangers kind of around Cottonwood, to kind of treat her feet for that. And they wanted to turn her back to Phantom to, go back there and get treatment and, rest up. But she refused. She says, I'm going or whatever. They let her go. But she was in such distress, she ran into another hiker who agreed to carry her pack for her. This is a good Samaritan to say, hey, I'll carry your pack the rest of the way. She eventually made it out, but, her feet were destroyed. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe in your experience, you can recall people will come up to, I guess, either the south or the north, but let's at the North Rim, there were people that were coming out that had intended to go back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But they would have never made it. So now they're stuck. And there's a shuttle service. And I remember trying to help this one guy, asking people and asking the shuttle service, even though it was really none of my business, but I felt for this guy. His friends headed back to the North Rim, and there was no way he was going to make it. And he was stuck. Luckily, he did hop on a shuttle, but that probably happens frequently. I don't know if you can recall that.
Well, we had 4 in our group. The runners that we had intended to go back, and do rim to rim to rim. The 2 runners and 2 of our hikers who were also planning to go back. Well, when they got to the north side, they said, yeah, no, they were too beat up, to kind of do the return trip. But the shuttle service that the rest of us had booked was totally full, right? That time of year, there was no full. They ended up convincing one of the members of the kitchen staff to drive them back the next day.
For how much money?
It was the same. It was $500. They should have paid the guy more, which is it's $125 for the shuttle per person. So they ended up kind of breaking even. The guy, I would have held out for more or whatever. But otherwise, there was no shuttle service for the next couple of days. They had no availability just because how popular it is. So this is where you need to get your logistics right? You need to kind of declare, I'm going to do this, and then have a plan B if you get over there and you either have somebody with a car that's ready to drive you back, or you have shuttle reservations, because you can't rely on the generosity of somebody in the kitchen to kind of drive you back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. All right, 2 last questions and we're done. Yeah. Since we're still on R2R, we've really fleshed out a lot of information, but is there any one tip that you have for R2R hikers? It doesn't have to be fitness. Is there anything that you want to suggest? We covered a lot, but
either do your homework or go with somebody who's got the experience and has done it, and not, I don't think just watching a YouTube video is sufficient enough. There are a lot of nuances to it. I'll give you another shout out. Your podcast, on Rim to Rim, kind of number of months ago or whatever, was a great resource for me. And it helped me convince everybody we were going to do South Kaibab to North Kaibab, even though it was technically longer than doing North Kaibab to Bright Angel. So,
well, thanks for shouting out that episode. So that was my first episode.
Yeah.
And I interviewed Will Burkhart, who's done Rim to Rim. He's guided about 60 times.
Right.
And on his own, he's done Rim to Rim to Rim. He's a stud. But there were people on the trip. Some of those clients had listened to that interview. And they said it should be required. It should be required that anybody do this. They have to listen to that episode. So I'm glad you brought that up.
I mean, if I was a guide, I'd almost give a test, right. To see if people are really listening and absorbing this information or not. Right. So
it's probably a good idea. All right. Well, one last question. Same thing for TMB, Tour du Mont Blanc. Any one tip that maybe we didn't talk as much about that, but any one thing you want to recommend to people?
I mean, again, the more you can get yourself smarter about what you're getting into, right? Your comment about West Coast trails versus East Coast trails is very applicable, right? It's not a quote walk in the park, given, kind of the nature of the trails. Having the knowledge, even I've done, a lot of these trips, but I don't know. I can't read over there. The weather patterns are very changeable. I'd say the canyon is a little more predictable. It's hot, right? You're not going to get, they have had kind of extreme weather from, in other things, but over there clouds run and whatnot. So local knowledge, being aware of this stuff. You can be fit as hell, but, get caught up with, all the stuff that you don't know about. So
sure. Yeah. And in fact, I think it's episode 3 of the Hike Strong podcast about TMB. I talked to 2 experts.
Yeah.
One is she's an expert on doing it solo, or not doing it solo, doing it without a guide. And the other one is he actually, so he provides guides Adventure Base is the company for TMB. And then there was, anyway, guys, check it out.
I mean, one thing there, you are a lot closer to civilization, with the hut system, right? So there are, quote, bailout points, right? You're less likely to be that far from support and help, which helps. Then again, if you're going hut to hut, you've got to plan all that stuff ahead of time or arrange for pickups and drop-offs. So not something you decide a week before, I want to load up a backpack and start going on this stuff. A certain degree of planning is required. I saw so many YouTube videos where people tried that, and 3 or 4 days into it, they abandoned the trip, because of lack of planning.
Yeah, I want to reference that podcast that I did, because in it, you can get some information about somebody to contact about booking. You're right. You have to book your hut. If you don't want to do any camping and you want to do all huts, you got to plan that.
And the camping restrictions vary from country to country.
Right.
I can't recall who does it, but one of them will let you do, quote, wild camping. I think Switzerland, it's banned. So you've got to know where you are and, before you pitch a tent or whatever.
Yeah,
so on that.
Exactly.
Cool.
John, it was a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for saying yes.
Okay.
To this wonderful conversation. I appreciate the opportunity that you gave me to work with you.
Okay.
And I'm excited for your future endeavors. I hope you'll stay in touch.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Let me know what you have in mind. You're a good man. Thanks for the info.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm sure there'll be something in the future. I'll reach out and say,
Excellent. John, been a pleasure. Thank you. Take care.
Great. Have a good one.
That concludes this episode of the Hike Strong podcast. I'm committed to keeping all of the episodes for free. All I ask is that you subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. And don't forget to share this podcast with your friends. My goal is to build a vast community of hikers with the confidence to crush any local or global trail. I hope you will join me in this endeavor. So until next time, train, hike, repeat, and as always, I'm here to support you every step of the way.